The Young and the Restless spoilers Saturday's update August 31st, 2024. Nikki Newman entered the hospital room with a mixture of relief and anxiety. Seeing her granddaughter, Faith, awake and recovering after the terrifying accident was a blessing, but the sight of Faith's pale face and fragile state weighed heavily on her heart. Nikki had always been fiercely protective of her family, and this near tragedy had shaken her to the core. As she approached Faith's bedside, Nikki's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. "Faith, sweetheart, I'm so glad you're awake," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. She gently took Faith's hand in hers, squeezing it reassuringly. Faith smiled weakly, grateful for her grandmother's presence. "I'm okay, Grandma," she whispered, though the fatigue in her voice betrayed her exhaustion. But Nikki's relief was quickly replaced by concern. She knew how close Faith had come to losing her life, and the thought of it was unbearable. She had to make sure that Faith understood the gravity of what had happened and the importance of avoiding such dangerous situations in the future. "Faith," Nikki began, her tone gentle but firm, "I need you to promise me something. You have to promise me that you'll never let this happen again. No more driving without a license, and definitely no more drinking before you're of age. It's not just illegal, it's dangerous. You could have been seriously hurt, or worse." Faith looked down, guilt washing over her. She knew her grandmother was right. The accident had been a wake-up call, and she never wanted to put herself, or her family, through that kind of fear again. "I promise, Grandma," she said quietly. "I won't do it again." Nikki nodded, satisfied with Faith's promise, but the worry didn't completely leave her eyes. She knew that as much as Faith might mean those words now, peer pressure and the impulsiveness of youth could easily lead her astray again. Nikki made a mental note to keep a closer eye on her granddaughter, to be there for her and guide her through the turbulent years ahead. However, Faith's thoughts quickly turned to her friend Lucy, who had been at the center of so much of the recent chaos. Despite everything, Faith was worried about Lucy and wanted to check on her. She looked up at Nikki, a hint of determination in her eyes. "Grandma, I want to go see Lucy. I need to make sure she's okay." But before Nikki could respond, Sharon entered the room, overhearing Faith's request. Sharon's face immediately hardened, and she shook her head vehemently. "No, Faith. You're not going to see Lucy," Sharon said firmly. "That girl is the reason you're in this hospital bed. She's trouble, and I don't want you anywhere near her." Faith was taken aback by the harshness in her mother's voice. She had always looked up to Lucy as a friend, someone who had been there for her through thick and thin. But Sharon's words cut deep, and Faith couldn't help but feel torn between her loyalty to her friend and the anger radiating from her mother. "Mom, it wasn't Lucy's fault," Faith protested, trying to defend her friend. "It was an accident." But Sharon wasn't having any of it. The fear and frustration that had been building inside her ever since the accident spilled over into anger. "Accident or not, Lucy is bad news," Sharon snapped. "She's been nothing but trouble since the day she came into your life. I'm not going to let her drag you down with her." Nikki watched the exchange with a heavy heart. She understood Sharon's fear. Any mother would be furious after seeing her child hurt, but she also knew that holding on to such anger wasn't healthy. She stepped forward, placing a calming hand on Sharon's shoulder. "Sharon, sweetheart, take a breath," Nikki said softly. "I know you're upset, but don't let this anger consume you. Lucy is just a child, too. We all make mistakes." Sharon turned to Nikki, her eyes flashing with a mix of frustration and desperation. "But, Nikki, she nearly got Faith killed. How can I just forgive that?" Nikki squeezed Sharon's shoulder gently. "I'm not saying you have to forgive her right away, but holding on to this anger isn't going to help anyone, least of all Faith. We need to focus on healing, not blame." Sharon's shoulders slumped as Nikki's words sank in. She knew, deep down, that Nikki was right, but the protective mother in her struggled to let go of the anger. For now, she would keep Faith away from Lucy, but maybe, in time, she could find it in her heart to forgive. Meanwhile, across town, the Abbott family was dealing with their own set of troubles. Jack Abbott had always been the steady hand at the helm of Jabot, guiding the company through thick and thin. But recently, with the pressures of running both Jabot and Chancellor Winters, Jack had begun to feel the strain. He knew that his brother, Billy, had the skills and experience to help, But convincing Billy to return to Jabot was another matter entirely. Billy had always been a free spirit, someone who chafed under the constraints of corporate life. But more than that, his relationship with Jack had been fraught with tension and rivalry. The two brothers had spent years battling for control of Jabot, their competitive natures often driving a wedge between them. Although they had managed to work together in the past, the scars of their past conflicts ran deep. Jack had recently approached Billy with a proposal, return to Jabot and help steer the company through its latest challenges, while Lily Winters took the reins at Chancellor Winters. It seemed like a logical division of labor, one that would allow both Billy and Lily to play to their strengths. But Billy had balked at the idea, his pride still stinging from his previous ouster from Jabot. "I'm not going back to Jabot, Jack," Billy had said firmly when his brother first broached the subject. "That ship has sailed. I'm done with being part of your company." Jack had sighed, knowing that Billy's refusal was about more than just business. It was about their history, about the years of animosity that had built up between them. "Billy, I know we've had our differences," Jack had said, trying to bridge the gap between them. "But we're family. We need to stick together, especially now." But Billy had simply shaken his head. "We've never really been on the same page, Jack. You want me to come back, but we both know it's only a matter of time before we're at each other's throats again. I'm not interested in reliving that." Now, as Jack reflected on their conversation, he couldn't help but wonder if there was any way to truly mend the rift between them. They had come so far, yet the old wounds still festered beneath the surface. Would they ever be able to put the past behind them and work together as brothers, rather than rivals? Billy, for his part, was equally conflicted. He had always felt overshadowed by Jack, always struggled to find his own path. Returning to Jabot felt like a step backward, like admitting that he couldn't stand on his own 2 feet. But at the same time, he couldn't deny that a part of him missed the sense of purpose that came with being part of the family business. As the days passed, Billy found himself torn between his pride and the possibility of reconciliation. He knew that Jack's offer was genuine, that his brother wanted to work together, not compete. But the scars of their past battles were hard to ignore, and Billy wasn't sure if he was ready to trust Jack again. In the end, both Jack and Billy knew that the decision to reunite was about more than just business, it was about family. And while the path to healing might be long and difficult, it was one they would have to walk together if they ever hoped to truly move forward. Back in the hospital, Nikki continued to comfort both Sharon and Faith, hoping that time would help heal the wounds between them. As she looked at her granddaughter's pale face, she couldn't help but pray that the strength of their family bonds would be enough to carry them through these difficult times. For the Newmans and the Abbotts, life in Genoa City was never without its challenges. But no matter how many obstacles they faced, one thing remained constant, the unbreakable ties of family, which bound them together through thick and thin. Whether those bonds would be enough to overcome the latest trials remained to be seen, but in the end, it was their only hope.